You're listening to The Brian Mansell Show, streaming exclusively on Spotify and YouTube. New episodes every Monday and Friday. Hello, everyone, and welcome to The Brian Mansell Show. As always, I'm your host, Brian Mansell, and I've got a podcast, or a vodcast, whatever you want to call it. To me, this is a podcast dedicated to everything that has to do with the amazing game of American football. Now, today, we've got a lot to talk about. We haven't had an episode in the past week, but we are going to be focusing on the most important issues from this past week. So we have our This Week in Football segment, followed by the two most important stories that I want to give the most attention to. That being the domestic violence cases that have been on the rise in the NFL. Why is domestic violence still an issue? How hard is it to keep your hands to yourself? We're going to go through that whole dynamic of why is this still an issue? And then we're going to follow it up with the number one story I wanted to talk about. I did a whole segment on my last live stream on Twitch, which you could always check out. That's on my backup channel, which I do not do football content on. I just basically do basic sports content on top of reactions and trending topics, including politics and news. We'll go through all of that there. That channel is Bampa Bay. You're hearing that for the first time, Bampa Bay on Twitch. That's where I do all my live streams, all my extra content that's not football related. You're interested in gaming and stuff, that's all there too. Now, on that channel, we talked about the Sorsby segment a little bit and just kind of really let loose on how terrible gambling has become. And that's mainly what that segment's going to be dedicated to. It's not really more about Sorsby becoming eligible, because I think he's more of a victim here, even though he is a perpetrator and the main guilty party here. There's so much more that I want to get into why the system itself has failed Brendan Sorsby. And after that, we'll go into the tape room for the first time in a few weeks, and we're going to talk about the newest move to the Philadelphia Eagles, AJ Epinesa, who failed his physical back in March when he was supposed to sign with the Browns, and now he has got his team in Philly. Kind of figure out, what does he bring to Philly? What's the difference between his performance in 2024 and past years compared to last year, which he was really battling a lot of injuries? We want to kind of see where was the difference in performance that led to the down year he had, and why was it that he failed his physical? We'll go into the full details, and then we'll close out with our feel-good moment of the week. But before we get to any of that information and any of those segments, let's go straight to This Week in Football. So we have a few stories to go through. Obviously, you all know about Brendan Sorsby being reported eligible now to compete in the 2026 college football season. You can thank the courts in Texas for that one, in Lubbock County, who allowed him to do so. And the NCAA is not happy about it. A lot of people are not happy about it. We'll talk about it further in the show. And let's just say Texas Tech itself is not making the situation any better. They're really not. It's getting ugly. It's basically trying to say there is no guilt here. He's not the problem, which we'll have more onto why that can be true and both false. The next big story, the Bears. The board of directors voted on Thursday to officially advance their stadium development plans to Hammond, Indiana, with the exact location to be selected. This is the first time now that the Bears board has voted on any stadium site, and as one source said, there is more work to do, but barring anything strange, it's a done deal. So it looks like, due to what we talked about last time, the issues in Chicago with the governor putting his foot down and saying, we are not giving any money to try and help build you guys a stadium. You can afford to do it on your own dime. The Bears have decided they're going to go to Indiana, who said they would gladly take another team in and gladly give them the money they need to build their new stadium and bring more tourism to the state of Indiana. So as a result, it looks like the Chicago Bears, who will keep their name Chicago, are going to be taking another step closer to becoming the Indiana football team that they're going to be, I should say. Illinois, once again, losing another sports team. You hate to see it. You hate to see it. Next story we're going to talk about a little bit further. It's one of the reasons why we're having the domestic violence segment. Jonathan Cooper was arrested on domestic violence charges back on June 5th. That was last week. There's more to that just unfolded last night. We'll talk more about that as well. On top of that, we go back to June 8th. The Chiefs announced they are re-signing L'Jarius Sneed to a one-year deal worth up to $5 million. L'Jarius Sneed started his career with the Chiefs before departing for the Tennessee Titans in free agency just a few years ago. Now he is returning to the team to work alongside their new corner, who they had just added in the draft, that being Mansour Delane. At this point for the Chiefs, this was a low-risk move for L'Jarius Sneed's sake. He got through his legal dramas. Obviously, the experiment in Tennessee didn't work out. But if there's anybody that could have a rebound anywhere, it would be Sneed, and it would be in Kansas City, where he was originally drafted. it does work out for them. Hopefully, if this ends up being a good year for them defensively, they'll keep him longer than just this 1 year deal, and they'll figure out a more long-term structure after this. Hopefully, we'll see that be the case. Another big story after this, 7-time Pro Bowl guard Joel Bitonio of the Cleveland Browns announced his retirement from the NFL. The Browns lose who is sure to be one of the greatest offensive linemen in the history of the Cleveland Browns franchise, Joel Bitonio, the guard himself. Obviously, this is a very, very hard moment for a lot of Browns fans because he meant a lot to the team. He was one of the few loyalists who was there from since he was drafted, never left, never departed, stayed with the team his whole career. This is a guy who deserves a lot more respect than he is getting right now. And there's a lot of arguments you can make for him to become a Hall of Famer. I think there's a Hall of Fame case. He's better than some of the Hall of Fame O-linemen they have in there now. But that remains up to the committee. I could see this probably being a legacy put in, or he's going to get in late. And we're talking probably after maybe 5 years being on the ballot. It's probably going to go beyond that. But that's what I'm saying here. Bitonio officially retiring. In 5 years, he'll be eligible for the Hall of Fame, and we'll see what happens when that time arises. Will he get the Joe Thomas treatment? Unlikely, but we will see when we get there. Another part of our domestic violence segment, which we'll be mentioning later, Rams left tackle Alaric Jackson was arrested on a felony domestic violence charge Monday night. That's coming from the LA Police Department. So we have another offensive player who has been named in a domestic violence situation. The same deal was also given, if you don't remember, to last week when we talked about it, to Josh Jacobs of the Packers. That was a moment in time. Next piece of news, Calais Campbell believes that this season will be his final one. His 19th NFL season he's going to play in this year as a member of the Baltimore Ravens. It will be his last season as of right now. We don't know if that will change. Another major story after that, Patrick Mahomes has now set a new record in the NFL without even having to step on the football field. He's getting 2 years added to his contract, which is tying him to Kansas City through the 2033 season. If I'm correct, that will place him at about age 37 when the contract is up, at a value of about $504.75 million total on this contract, which will make it the first NFL deal ever to pass $500 million in value. The initial rookie contract he got in 2017 was 4 years, $16.4 million. What he signed in 2020 was a 10-year, $450 million contract. It was groundbreaking. He already earned well over $200 million of it at this point, while the QB market has continued to just shoot up way past him at this point. Now they're adjusting the deal to make him more in line with the current QB market. He's going to be underpaid. Obviously, like that's going to be part of it. He's still not the highest paid QB. I said he's going to be the highest paid, but that's just when it's all said and done, the amount of money he's going to rake in. But either way, he's now tied to the franchise much, much longer. It's an interesting restructure. We'll see how it goes for Mahomes moving forward. The total money is the most impressive part of this. And technically, if he wants to get out, he can get out of the contract in 2028 after the next 2 seasons. So after this season and next season, if something goes wrong, situation's sour, mindset's sour over there, he can leave and go to another franchise. And plus, with the contract he has, it's not that bad. So he does have some flexibility, at least in the next few years, if he doesn't want to stay in Kansas City and wants to try and win somewhere else. That's very possible. Like we talked about earlier, which will be in our tape room segment, the Eagles signed former Bills defensive end A.J. Epinesa. He was originally a second-round pick by Buffalo back in 2020. He wanted to sign with the Browns in March, but he didn't pass his physical, but now he's landing in Philadelphia. Another major extension. Aaron Brewer, the center from the Miami Dolphins, reached agreement with the team on the 10th on a 3-year, $52.5 million extension that will include $37 million guaranteed. It makes him one of the highest paid centers in the league. This is a major deal because he went from being an undrafted free agent to a finalist for the NFL's Protector of the Year award last season. That's the reason behind him getting the big extension. He was one of the best offensive linemen in football last year, hence why he was a finalist for the award. And despite Miami's record and performance, he outperformed what was expected of the entire team. He did his job. The Broncos and Sean Payton on Thursday reached agreement on a new 5-year contract. Payton led the Broncos to the 3rd most wins in the NFL the past 2 years, including an AFC Championship game appearance last season. The new Broncos owner Greg Penner has both his head coach and GM, that being George Patton, under contract through the 2030 season. Now establishes stability across the board for football operations. So, locking down your coach, who has completely turned around your franchise and their expectations moving forward, it's a huge win for Sean Payton and for the Denver Broncos. Next story, the Kansas City Chiefs are dealing Wanya Morris to the Atlanta Falcons. He started 16 games for the Chiefs, and he's giving Atlanta now a much-needed tackle support. I did mention this a few days ago, about a day ago, when they said that these trade rumors were going on. Wanya Morris, I said, would be a good fit for teams like the Jaguars, who would need a little bit of extra tackle support, or a team like even the Raiders, who could use it if they wanted to in division, just really want to get rid of him. I think the Panthers would have been a solid spot, but they end up going to the NFC South, the right division, but going to Atlanta, who they could use tackle help, but it's not the most glaring need, but it's a help and need nonetheless. They take care of it. Good help for Tua Tagovailoa, who I expect to be the QB1 this year in Atlanta. Another major story from last night, former Raiders wide receiver Henry Ruggs was denied parole nearly 5 years after killing a woman in a car crash in Las Vegas. That coming from the Nevada Board of Parole Commissioners. That's what they ruled on Thursday. He was first eligible for parole after the 5 years. He has done his due diligence. There's a lot of talk about what he's done since then. He said he has given his life to Christ. He has been an advocate talking to young people about the importance of trying not to drink and drive because of the legal repercussions that come from it and how it can destroy your life. He has mentioned that. He has been very outspoken about it. And unfortunately, he does not get his parole. Apparently, there was one little thing that he didn't do right that ended up being the decider in him not getting parole. It wasn't something in terms of actions. It was a decision he made that affected him getting parole. He'll be eligible again next year for parole. He'll be eligible next year, and he may be granted then, but I don't expect him to return to the game of football anytime soon. This is the former Alabama first-round pick by the Raiders, who unfortunately made a very poor choice when he was younger. Former linebacker Darren Lee has been indicted officially on a murder charge in the death of his partner. If you don't remember that, it's a very dark story. His case is apparently going to be considered first-degree murder, which would then mean he could get a life sentence, and because of the state he is in where this occurred, he is eligible also for the death penalty. We don't want to talk about it like that, but you have to know the facts. That's the facts. And I think the final major story we have is an update on the Jonathan Cooper situation, like I had mentioned on Thursday night. So we'll conclude this week in football so we can get to this Jonathan Cooper segment. Because Jonathan Cooper officially might have just ruined any chances of continuing to play football. He really might have. And that's not something I like to say lightly, because I think he's a fantastic football player and I like looking at the football side of things, but when life gets in the way, you got to talk about it. Anything that happens, you got to talk about it. Just like when people were giving me smack about talking about Jackson Dart on the show, that doesn't matter because it does affect football. And and it's even beyond football. It has to be talked about. It has to be discussed. This will be discussed. Jonathan Cooper was officially arrested again on Thursday night on charges of domestic violence, harassment, and violating a protection order. According to police, his ex-girlfriend called authorities after he allegedly showed up at her residence, knocked on her door for 5 to 10 minutes, and repeatedly called and texted her. Per the Denver Post, an updated arrest affidavit states that a forensic nurse reported his ex-girlfriend suffered strangulation with hypoxia and a traumatic brain injury. So I think he's cooked. Let's start with that. I think his career, he's going to be cooked here unless the NFL pulls the NFL thing and, gives these guys a break and lets them, continue playing football with just a little slap on the wrist and convincing the judge, here's about $1 million. Just, keep this clean. Keep it clean. Let's just settle it out of court and we'll be good. And then this week, play football again because he's a very good football player. This is what happens, people. This is what happens. It's not like I'm saying this lightly at all. This is the truth. This is not a topic I enjoy talking about. You have to understand that. I don't like constantly bringing up people getting arrested. I don't like constantly bringing up crime. I don't like constantly bringing up something that was a terrible thing to happen. I don't like talking about negative, bad things. But when it happens at this level, at this severity, it has to be discussed. So it's not just Jonathan Cooper. That's the thing we have to understand as well. This isn't just Jonathan Cooper. This is Josh Jacobs, which there's obviously things to be figured out there where he's going to have to prove his innocence. But it's also Alaric Jackson getting hit with a felony charge. Originally, this thing for Cooper was at a misdemeanor at the moment. And then with this now, with the updates coming from the forensic nurse, we're looking at probably a felony with some attempted murder charges, maybe. So in this case, we're in a bad spot for him. He's in a bad spot. Alaric Jackson's an interesting spot. And Josh Jacobs, we don't even know. But this has been an interesting trend. The domestic violence numbers have been increasing over time. And we've done a really good job as a country trying to raise more awareness about domestic violence and trying to keep it clean. And no, it is not just women getting attacked by men. It is women attacking men as well. It does happen to men. But at the rate that we see it, how it is reported, how it is talked about, the way it's typically done based off crime statistics, it is mostly men on women. That can also be true. But don't deny that it does happen to men. It does. Domestic violence is a serious problem. It's hard to kind of pinpoint exactly where it goes wrong. What drives a person to commit domestic violence? I want to say that the majority of it comes from usually a broken home. I want to say a good amount of it comes from mental illness. I want to say a good amount of it comes from other things. But at the end of the day, the most important thing to know is that it just shouldn't be happening. And there's no excuse in the world to ever put your hands on another person unless, and this is the only time I say unless they make an attempt at your life. But otherwise, there's no excuse to fight. There's no excuse to hit. No excuse to put your hands on somebody else in any capacity. It doesn't matter what the reasoning is. You found out your girlfriend cheated on you. No excuse to put your hands on the woman. No excuse to hit her. No excuse to threaten her life. You find out that she burned through all your money. It sucks. No excuse to put your hands on her. No excuse to hurt her. No excuse to threaten her. If you really have a problem with your partner, the way they've been acting, the way things have been going on, you seek counseling and therapy to fix things out. If that's not an option, you seek divorce and separation. You seek a breakup. That's it. And if it continues, you file for a restraining order. I don't see the difficulty in that. It happens from broken homes. It happens from a bad upbringing. It happens from learned behavior from other people in their life. It comes from so many things. And I think the one thing I didn't want to bring up, because it's, it's self-explanatory, but I'm going to have to bring it up. It's CTE as well. It's 100% CTE. It's already proven that in contact sports and heavy sports that we see an increase, I should say, in the reported traumatic brain injuries that come from the game of football. Over time, the amount of head-to-head collisions, the amount of hard collisions you have at high speeds that forces your brain to hit hard against your skull, which really cannot be minimized much by the helmet. They could try, it doesn't change much. When that happens, your brain is slamming into the front. It's slamming back. It's slamming to the side. As that starts to happen over time, your brain takes injuries. Small injuries, over time, starts to take damage. It starts to bruise. It starts to cause problems. And because different parts of your brain control different parts of your behavior and your actions, that those things are affected. You look at it and you see it a lot with a lot of former athletes who were involved in heavy contact sports. They could happen in hockey. It happens clearly in football. It happens in rugby. It has happened in soccer, we've noticed as well, which is very interesting to me. And in those sports, when you see what happens, you realize really quickly that it's a severe health problem. It's a severe risk that you're putting yourself in to play the game of football because you love it. And that's a sacrifice that's made, is sacrificing your long-term health. The brain injuries, it affects your motor function. It affects your way of behavior. It affects your behavior. It affects your actions. It affects your morality. It affects your everyday life. You hear from athletes all the time that they're in constant aches and pains because of the pain that they feel from the years of torture their body has gone through. You see all the time, you've got players that have broken fingers. Their fingers are permanently disformed because they had broken or dislocated their fingers and never got surgery or proper corrective protections done to fix it. So they've lived their life with the issue. That's another thing. And you want a good example, look at a Hall of Fame O-lineman from the Cincinnati Bengals, Anthony Munoz. It's the same deal. He has a finger that's bent completely back here, his pinky. It's bad. But it's because he was in the love for the game. These guys put their bodies on the line every single time they step on a football field. And it's all because they love it. They love being on the field. They love competing like a gladiator. It's what it is. But that CTE affects a lot of things. And I'm not saying it's an excuse in any way for the actions that happen. But it is proven that people who have the CTE, their behavior changes, and it's been reported that spouses will say, I don't recognize that person. I won't recognize them. It's not who they were when I met them. And a lot of it is because of the brain injuries that come from playing football. It causes personality changes, behavior changes. They said Aaron Hernandez had CTE. Doesn't excuse what he did. I mean, he was doing a lot of bad stuff before it was even believed to have gotten as bad as it did. But beyond that, it's also Junior Seau. Junior Seau had CTE. And that was another big thing because Junior was an incredible football player, one of the best we've ever watched touch the football field. But the circumstances around his life, you learn later on, you start to realize, CTE is a really, really big issue that's just not talked about enough. It's a big problem, and it needs to be covered more. And the more we realize that behavior can be affected from the game of football itself, I think the sooner we can start to realize, we need to be more mindful about whether or not we want our kids playing football. I think that's another big thing. If you're a parent and and your kids love the game of football, they love to play it, they love to watch it, let's try our best to make sure that those kids are protected as well. Because that's important too. Because your kids have to understand that there's going to be a sacrifice made if they play football. Keep them in as minimal contact as possible for the longest time, because there are people who will have their kids playing contact football, full pads and helmets from like 5 to 6 years old, and they'll be playing. Like that, we don't need to do that. We don't need to do that. We can keep them in non-contact for as long as possible up until about high school or until like late middle school. So we're talking about they're like 13, 14. About then is about the time that they make the transition to tackle. And it's good that they can learn the strategies of how to tackle and things before that, but they shouldn't be encouraged to be playing that yet until they get to high school. I think it's the most streamlined way to protect the kids long term, so that this way they're less likely to have a higher progression of CTE over time. It's limiting it, because at the end of the day, you're not getting rid of the NFL. You're not getting rid of tackle football in the NFL. That just will not happen. They're not going to turn to a flag football league. They're not going to turn into a two-hand touch league. That's not happening. They are a tackle football league. It will never change. They've taken a lot of safety measures to try to prevent these things from being worse than they are, but it's near impossible to do so. It really is. So, in the end, football is a medical risk, and it has to be addressed as such. And it also does play a role, I think, in the domestic violence things. It does take a part in the suicide rates. It does play a role in the in increased bad behavior. It does happen. It's not even like me making an excuse. It's a proven fact. So if somebody tells me that Jonathan Cooper might have CTE, I would probably believe you. But I'm not going to excuse it all for his behavior, because at the end of the day, you freaking strangled somebody, man. You strangled somebody that didn't deserve it. Like that's another thing. I don't understand the normalization among normal people to justify putting your hands on another person who didn't do anything physically to warrant that action. That's a big problem. And we need to do as much as possible to be strict in the NFL, much more strict on taking care of these off the field issues. I'm not talking about settlements anymore. Okay? The biggest solution is you kill the fact of getting settlements in the courts, because that is where you are failing as a league to protect people. That's the issue. Okay? The problem that we saw with James Pierce, let's see how that's resolved. Because the last thing we need to see is that if he cannot prove to hold true to what the court has asked of him, and the whole thing involving his ex-girlfriend, we're going to know for sure that the NFL their settlement stuff is not going to work anymore. Their plea deals are not going to work anymore. It's been happening way too often. It's been happening for a long time. Everybody and their mother knows about how it went before even Goodell was commissioner. They got away with a lot. They got away with a lot. That wasn't even an exaggeration. It's the truth. They got away with a lot. And the NFL played a large role in making sure that players who did bad things didn't go away for a long time. Most of the time. The only guys I've ever seen get severely punished correctly has been Henry Ruggs. Henry Ruggs and Aaron Hernandez are the only two I've ever seen get severely punished in my lifetime. I have not seen another football player get a worse punishment as an active football player than those two. One guy was a literal serial killer. The other guy, drunk driving, killed a woman and her dog. Yeah. And he was doing, and it wasn't just like reckless speeding. I'm talking like over 100 miles an hour full speed into a RAV4, which legitimately killed them. And it was not even from the accident itself. It was because the car caught on fire. There's so many more things to that. Those are the two harshest punishments I've ever seen. The two harshest. Because unless somebody dies, literally unless somebody dies, these guys get, these players will get away with it. An athlete will get away with it. It's unfortunate. But the more stories you start to read, I urge you to really do your research. To really do your research on the history of how the NFL handles players who commit crimes. And start to learn for yourself how the NFL's moral compass really works. How does the NFL's moral compass really work? Do that research. And I'm not saying this because I hate the NFL. I'm not saying this in any way because I love football. I love the game. I love watching every single Sunday. I love talking with the players. I love talking with media. I love talking with the scouts about everything, the execs, everybody. It's amazing. But there's this dark side that has to be discussed. It has to be mentioned. And it would be in bad faith to not talk about it. If the NFL were to be stronger on crime within the NFL among its own players, I think we would have a better quality league. We'd have better quality play. We'd have better quality performances all across the board. We need to see more of that. We really do. So hopefully we see a better job done by the NFL over time in handling these issues. Because really, this guy should be getting punished. I mean, we saw Rashee Rice get punished, but not because of the NFL. No, the NFL's not punishing him. No. The government had to punish him. The government had to punish him because he violated a probationary order. And he got 30 days in jail. So, that's my point. The government had to step in and do it. That shouldn't be happening. The NFL needs to be doing a better job of policing their players and making sure they understand. We have personal conduct policy for a reason. If you act out, you're missing a minimum of 6 games. That's not enough. That's not enough. That's too light. You need to do it based off the circumstances of each individual case. Like this case that we have right now with Cooper, if all of this is true and all of this is that bad, these circumstances, this guy should be out the year. Make him miss a season. Make him miss a paycheck. All the guaranteed money, void. All your guaranteed money is voided now for the year. You can't make any money. You're home. That would be the most harsh punishment you could do. On top of that, it could also be let the legal system do its job. So leave it at that. If you want to fix the domestic violence problem, if you want to fix the crime problem within the NFL among players acting out and not behaving and just being terrible in their actions, this is what you do. You lay the hammer down. You enforce it hard. I've seen the NFL enforce pot charges, weed charges harder than actual assault and violence cases. I'm still blown away that that's a thing. Like, really read up on that. The problem with weed is stronger than the problem with domestic violence, assault, and anger. It is so different. I'm still floored at how it's handled. But that's that. We need to figure out this domestic violence issue, and the only way we can fix it is getting the NFL more involved and actually get them committed to finding a serious solution, not a temporary bandage. Next up, we're going to talk about sports gambling because Brennan Sorsby has officially been reinstated. As you all know, he was granted his injunction versus the NCAA, and he'll be eligible to play in 2026. The Texas Tech star was declared ineligible for wagering on college sports by the NCAA, but the injunction by the Lubbock County, Texas judge has made it so he can play football again. So this injunction will prevent the NCAA governing body from punishing him for violating its rules on sports gambling. The judge, Ken Curry, ruled that his attorneys demonstrated he will suffer a probable, imminent, and irreparable injury if he can't play for the Red Raiders in 2026, and also enjoin the NCAA from prohibiting him from practicing or playing this fall. So he can now practice, he can now play. They instituted a 2-game suspension for him, so he can't play the first 2 games, but otherwise they felt that's sufficient punishment. Anything more, that's too much, because you're hurting his potential future. Shouldn't have been gambling. You shouldn't have been gambling. Forget that. That's an actually terrible thing. Sorsby was ruled ineligible by the NCAA after it was discovered he had wagered approximately $90,000 on professional and college sports over the last 4 years, including 40 bets involving Indiana football when he was a freshman with the Hoosiers back in 2022. And the NCAA ended up actually denying Texas Tech's appeal for reinstatement that past Friday. So this was announced on Monday. On the Friday before that, that was when the NCAA denied it. It went to court. The judge ruled in favor of Sorsby's attorney on Sorsby's side. Later Monday, the NCAA formally filed an appeal in Lubbock County, Texas. And according to court documents, it's an accelerated appeal. But any formal judicial case could end up occurring after Texas Tech plays this season. That makes any formal legal ruling moot if it comes after this season. And keep in mind, Texas Tech is nearly 3 months from its season opener on September 5th at home against Abilene Christian University. The NCAA rules completely prohibit athletes from wagering on sports in general, and athletes who bet on their own teams and schools will get permanent bans. They face permanent bans from doing so. And yet, in this case, the judge is basically saying, you know what? Your rules don't matter. You're going to hurt this kid's future. Let's go ahead and let him play. This is stupid. It might be the stupidest things of the stupidest things that I've ever seen. In the history of the sport. I'm not even joking. Because at this rate, you know what? Why not? You know what? I'm gonna actually rage. I might actually get enraged here and really crash out. But I'm gonna crash out for a second, okay? Excuse me if I'm about to yell into the mic. And if you have a problem with this, feel free turning down the volume on your headphones or your speaker, wherever you're listening or watching. It doesn't matter what the kid's future is if he's willingly throwing it away for temporary pleasure. $90,000, 40 of those bets on his own team as a freshman. He was doing it at Cincinnati. He even did it when he got to Texas Tech. It doesn't matter. He didn't learn. He went to therapy. Amazing. He got help. Amazing. 38, 39 days in therapy, whatever it was. Okay, fine. For rehabilitation, to be healed from his addiction. It doesn't change the fact that he did gamble. He gambled on his own team, on his own games. Immediately, that is a lifetime ban. No excuse. He should have been already declared for the supplemental draft and just seen what could happen in the NFL. That's where it should have been left. And instead, he's getting told by a judge, you know what? I don't care about your governing body's rules. My rule is this kid's future is going to be hurt. What is wrong with you? Like mentally, you're enabling the gambling. Oh, and by the way, fun little fact about the appeal that the NCAA is doing, because it's going to the Court of Appeals in Texas. The majority of the people on the Texas court, on that board, for the appeals court, are Texas Tech graduates. You heard that right. There are graduates, alumni from Texas Tech University. If you expect them to take their bias out of this, You are out of your mind. Texas is a football-first state. It doesn't matter where you are. It doesn't matter if you are in the legal, medical profession. Doesn't change anything. Everybody knows football. Everybody loves football. And for that reason, if you think the judges are not going to have bias to their own university to let this kid play, you are out of your mind. The idea of him having to play this year in 2026, him being allowed to play after admitting to having placed thousands of bets in sports, including 40 of them on his own team, like we just mentioned with Indiana. It shows it's just a highlight of the newest crossroads in this sports industry of a growing problem that overshadows even this with Sorsby. And what's even worse is there's so many people you can blame for this, but I do want to blame the school itself for this problem. In fact, we actually have the full document from Kirby Hocutt, who is the director of athletics at Texas Tech University, who put out a statement about all of this. It did not help. I'm going to give you the exact wording he said. I've watched the reaction to Monday's court ruling with great respect for my colleagues across college athletics. Many of them are people I admire, but I also owe it to Texas Tech and frankly the truth to offer a few facts that seem to be getting lost in the noise. So he's going to try to clarify this. He hasn't played a single down of football as a Red Raider. That doesn't mean anything. He was placing bets after he transferred to your school. He's going to miss the first 2 games of the season. What happens at that will depend in no small part on how its recovery continues to progress. Basically, if he continues to recover, we'll let him play. But if his recovery doesn't go well, we're going to have to not let him play. But we're taking it a day at a time as he is. We'll evaluate his recovery, compliance, and readiness as we go, watching closely. We are deeply committed to his progress and well-being. We're not operating on blind faith. We're operating on a comprehensive clinical compliance structure that we committed to before the court ruled in Brendan's lawsuit against the NCAA and that Brendan committed to as a condition of his return to our football program. Texas Tech is not a party to his lawsuit. We didn't file it. We didn't fund it. A young man in treatment for a clinically diagnosed addiction exercised his legal right to seek a remedy in court, and a judge agreed with him. The word integrity has been used a lot in the last 48 hours. As someone who has dedicated his career to college sports, I too believe integrity is essential to our industry's success. I also think integrity applies on more than one front. So does the integrity of how we treat a 22-year-old who sought help, entered residential treatment, and is working every day toward recovery. They don't have to be in conflict. I have 2 sons, including one who recently graduated from Texas Tech and played football. Throughout this process, I kept asking myself, how would I approach the situation if this were my own son? Let me be direct about what Texas Tech's position actually is. We're glad he's still part of our community because that is where we can extend him the best possible support in his ongoing recovery. Clinical care, device monitoring, financial oversight, outpatient therapy. That infrastructure exists because we take our responsibility to this young man seriously. We spent Monday after the judge's ruling getting those systems stood up for him, not thinking about X's and O's. Pulling him out of a structured environment, away from his team and his support system, doesn't protect anyone. It might be a cleaner headline, but it wouldn't be the right one, and it wouldn't be true to the institutional values that guide us every day. To my colleagues, I understand the frustration. The situation's hard. It's new. There's no perfect answer. The system we're operating within is binary, but the situation is not. We are open to ongoing conversations about how to best handle these issues as an industry moving forward. It's frustrating. Over time, it gets annoying having to constantly bring this up. But we have, I'm myself am frustrated just constantly having to talk about this. But we have to. It's an obligation on our part. We have to talk about it. Hocutt also said, which is important to note, which actually might be a positive maybe in this situation, that Sorsby came to the athletic facility immediately after the injunction was granted to meet with Texas Tech's information technology and compliance staff, so the IT staff, and have the monitoring software installed in his phone to make sure he's not placing any bets and that he's done gambling. So Texas Tech is officially on his side. People are angry about it, and I think the funniest part is that the Big 12 is trying to punish Texas Tech for letting Sorsby play. And the funniest part of this, which is the most upsetting part, and I really have to stress upsetting, the Attorney General in the state of Texas, Ken Paxton, sent a letter to the commissioner, Yormark, and the board of directors telling the league that they would be facing substantial liability if they take action against Texas Tech for playing Sorsby. Because technically the Big 12 conference is talking about whether the league can invoke the bylaw 3.6 that would sanction the Raiders if they decided to play Sorsby, who was declared ineligible by the NCAA themselves for the wagering on college sports. And also, let it be known, the 15 other universities in a conference call with your mark on Tuesday unanimously opposed the Red Raiders playing Sorsby. So then they all agreed that they were not in favor of this and they were not okay with it. Now they're going to decide as a group what's the best course of action now that we can do. What should we do to make them understand that they need to pay for this? And in the letter, by the way, which is what Paxton said would be the problem, he said that the Big 12 will be exposed to damages for Texas Tech's lost football revenues, damages to its alumni contributions, and damages to its recruitment plus attorney's fees. The total exposure for both the Big 12 and its members, joint and severally, will be substantially more than $200 million. And also, Paxton suggested that the league would face antitrust exposure liability for breach of contract and tortious interference. And any sanction that results in the cancellation, forfeiture, or alteration of Texas Tech's as scheduled games would constitute a breach of the contractual obligations to Texas Tech. So this is going to lead to a very, very big lawsuit that the state itself will sue the Big 12. I'm all about giving people the benefit of the doubt, but 9,000 mistakes totaling $90,000 is not a one-time mistake. That is 9,000 mistakes you made. Come on. And I understand the clinical side. It's a clinical addiction. It's not. No. Just because it's a clinical addiction does not mean and justify the fact that the dude is gambling. I understand that it's a big problem that Texas Tech is having here by supporting him through this, but it's also your quarterback. Why wouldn't you support him? You get what I'm saying? Like, it's not out of the question. It's not bizarre in any way. But I want to highlight the biggest issue of them all. The biggest issue in this whole deal involving Sorsby is not the fact that this is a problem involving Sorsby himself, but it's a bigger problem involving the sports gambling landscape. And I don't like talking about it this way but we have to. It's an obligation of ours. Brendan Sorsby is a victim. I know that sounds really weird to say too, because I just went on a rant saying the kids shouldn't play football again, and I'm still standing on it. But just because you are the perpetrator doesn't mean that you can't also be a victim, because he is a victim to a bigger problem that is still affecting everything in sports today ever since it has become more and more legalized across the 50 states. It is called sports gambling. It is called gambling sites. It is called gambling apps. It is called prediction markets. All of that stuff is now okay in the 50 states. It's growing over time. And there are now hundreds of sports books involved in this. This is not just a Sorsby issue. You have to blame a system that has allowed players to do the gambling now and has promoted not just athletes to gamble, but to promote all of us to gamble. We're talking about a world now in sports where every league has a gambling sponsor. We're talking about a world now where every league is tied to more than one sports book. Every team has a dedicated sports book or betting partner or sponsor. They all have something involved. Gambling itself is becoming a more acceptable thing in this world. And in my opinion, the more it becomes accepted, the more it becomes accepted and without regulation, proper regulation, the worse it's going to get. This feels like in today's day and age with the gambling problem, how it felt probably for parents in the 50s and 60s watching the cigarette commercials come out constantly. Because the concern was, it looks like they're appealing to kids to smoke and tell them to smoke when they really shouldn't be smoking because it's not good for them. They're not old enough. And they were like, no, we're not pushing it, kids. We're not pushing it to the kids. But later come out through lawsuits and through a lot of court work, they were. Their ads and marketing were pushing to a younger audience, even to about the ages of 16. Even down to actually, I think the youngest we saw pushed down to was 12 years old. And it feels like we're going down that way again, here with the way that gambling's being handled. So if that's going to be the case, you might have to take the approach of how we did in the 50s to tell these people that you need to fix your marketing because you're marketing it to younger people. We don't need that happening because we're enabling illegal behavior. And if we find out that you're liable for gambling addictions and people who shouldn't be gambling that are below the legal age to gamble, then we've got a problem. And at that point, they're going to be facing massive, massive lawsuits and massive regulation problems coming up. But it's like I was saying, Sorsby is the product of a flawed system, a system that is pushing people to gamble constantly. Millions and millions of people are gambling. I'm talking about hundreds of millions of people have gambled in the United States. I want to say about a third, which would put us at over 100 million people. Every day, hundreds of thousands of bets are placed on everything that you can think of. And it becomes even more acceptable and regulated through prediction markets. When you partner, when you're pushing, you're allowing it to infect your fans in the sport to tell them, hey, you love your team so much, why don't you go put some money on them? Put your money where your mouth is so that we can get a little money on the back end. It's scummy, it's crummy, it's not good. That shouldn't be happening. But it is what's happening. And then it spreads into your athletes who are gambling. It's beyond the fans at this point. It's now affecting the athletes more today than ever. That brings us into our next segment because we are really late into the show now. We're going to go ahead and get straight into the next segment. We're going to talk about what's going on here with AJ Epinesa in our tape room segment. He signed with the Eagles after failing a physical in March with the Browns. I think it has something to do with his neck injuries. He was on and off with injuries last year, which slowed down his production, but he played in 16 games still. We're going to talk about those production discrepancies and really highlight for us right here, what is it about Epinesa that is going to be super attractive for the Eagles and why they may actually end up playing him more often if they can get him to go back to his forms from the previous season. We're going to compare his tape from 24 and 25 and see what the stark difference is between those two. All right, so here's the first play we're going to go over. This is back in 2024. Again, you can tell by number 8 being here with Aaron Rodgers right there. Beautiful. So here's what we're going to understand. So Epinesa is wearing number 57. He wears them in all the clips. Just keep an eye on him right here. He's usually lined up on the left side every time. In this play, he's going to be a rusher. He's going to come around the edge here and try and get to Rodgers the best he can. 77 is the one with assignment. One thing you're going to notice with Epinesa is that his speed and his benefits are always to the outside. If he can beat the lineman to the outside shoulder in speed off the jump, he will find a way to compromise the pocket and get to the quarterback. That is something I've seen a lot with him. His moveset, to me, when you watch these clips, is much better than what we saw last year. Let's see what happens here in this clip. Again, you see Brees here in to protect on that left side. I don't know where he's going to go from here, but we're going to see here together on this snap. Let's see what that looks like together. Now, keep in mind, they're wearing their old jerseys. I love these things. But look, see, he puts in the stutter, right? And see how free he got? So he's selling to the inside. Smith is biting to the in, and then he's stuttering, like chopping his feet, going bump, 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 bump. And then he's going to break out to the outside shoulder. And when he does, he lands the hands beautifully. See that right arm, the way he basically eliminates Smith's arms there. He basically is able to put them away. The guy can't lock his hands on him. So he gets free, and now he breaks around the edge, completely hits Rodgers' blind side. He didn't even see it coming. That's the kind of stuff we see from Epinesa that is super positive about knowing where to put his hands in this case. He has that speed to break off. And I'm a little iffy on his moves itself because if you see it here, the way he's going to chop, boom, boom, boom. Like he does 3 chops, smack away. The quickness is there. The speed is there. That's a good positive. I want to see more of that, hopefully, from him in the future. But we're going to see where this goes now on the next play. Let's take a look here. Look at the speed rush we're going to see. So once again, you're going to see him lined up wide outside. There's no tight end here. His pursuit angle looks like it's going to come across this way, but really in actuality, you're going to see the guy kick, and he's going to have to try and play catch up to kind of seal him off in this area so that this way he can't break through. But unfortunately, he's going to be a little slow to the party, and Epinesa is going to take a good angle, try to engage, and then slip back out and get through. That's typically what's going to work here. Let's see what that looks like in action. So he's breaking through. He's sold that inside step a little bit, but he's using it to help him push outside more, forcing 74 to have to kick out further. He's going to do so. He goes to land the hand. There's the bend. It's very important for defensive ends to have and outside rushers. They need to be able to have that bend to get underneath arms on blocks. And Epinesa has that here, and he's going to be held up here. See how he's getting his hands under his face mask? That could be a penalty right there, the way he's grabbing. But he still finds a way to turn the corner with using his lower body. He's got the torque to do so, transfer speed over into his turn so he can carry himself through and get towards the quarterback faster on that path. He breaks free, open look, goodbye, Trevor Lawrence. So we see that he has some bend and flexibility here where if you're going to watch it in the tape from last year, it's not coming up as much. So there's the hand. He gets him there, but he's still able to power through and just turn the corner and get to Lawrence on the blind side, which is excellent. We want to see more of that again from him, but that's typically where you see most of his sacks produced from. It's typically on outside rushes like this. Let's go with another play here. This one's going to be a little bit more of a hustle play. This is going to be a big game for James Conner. He's going to give out 20 yards here, but just watch Epinesa on this one. He's going to make a big play here. This is another thing from 2024 that I really liked from him. You're going to see it right here. He's in this matchup, head up with the lineman. We'll see what happens. It's more of a run play. We could tell it is. This is James Conner with Kyler Murray here at the quarterback. Let's just see what happens here. They're showing 4 on the line. Snap taken. Here they go. They snap it. It's a high snap. He gets it. He hands it off. See how he's kind of wiped out of this play by the tight end here? That's fine. But he's watching Conner the whole time. He's got his eyes on the running back. He knows the ball's there. Look at how he's about to turn this into a big positive for his own stock. Okay, he's going to rip off the block from the tight end. Conner's is jumping free. The secondary's having a hard time getting to him. He's about to turn the corner, but watch Epinesa 57. Full speed, close the gap, get there. There is no giving up on the play. You'll see it again here from the overhead view. Watch what happens when the engagement happens. Okay, so he gets tied up here. He stays high on the block, gets free, but he's able to close up and get to him quick on the tackle from there. So there's a good hustle there. He's not the fastest guy, but he does show moments like this where he doesn't give up on the play. He's got the extra hustle. There's higher energy there. He gets there. He gets it done. I love that from Epinesa. It's one of the reasons why I really liked him when he was coming out of the draft is that he doesn't give up on plays. That's one of the big things. You'll see him here at the bottom of your screen in this box that I've put out here. Just keep an eye on him and what he ends up doing here because this is going to be very important moving forward. Just kind of see how he gets the sack on Rattler here. Now, most of his sacks he got this year were done earlier in the season. Like I said, he was battling injuries all year and his production dipped as a result. See how he gets to the inside, though? It's a little different than what he typically does. But look at what happens. He turns inside, and he's working around the inside here. Just watch his speed going across. He takes out this lineman, which I believe is Ruiz, and he's going to probably loop around here as Rattler goes to escape. So he's going to escape and just keep an eye on how he's able to turn and shut him down quick. He knows how to take angles, get across, and that's something I really like about Epinesa too, is that he can go across the formation like this very quickly, even on a pass rush attack. So he has some value as a rusher still, but it's not something that was attacking the same way last year, was less successful than I thought it would be more often than not. Now, this one's going to be a hard play to really dissect and hard to find, but I'm just going to highlight my player so you guys can watch him specifically, okay? He's going to be right here, 57. This is against the Patriots earlier this year. Let's take a look at what happened here on this specific play because you'll see an example for what I'm saying here that sometimes it's a little inconsistent and there's certain blocking approaches that are done that completely wipe him out of plays. And this is a good way to see it here. Now on this play, you're going to see Drake May make a scramble to the right side. Just watch what happens to AJ up here. Boom. Low block. That's not called. Typically that would be called like a chop block, but that wasn't called. But that's a way to get there is to get low on him. You go for the knees, and when you get low, he's not able to make the same moves that he typically can. He also is a big speed rusher, so if you go low, you derail him. It's hard for him to get back to that speed off the snap. That's another thing I could say, too, about Epinesa, which there is a bigger issue, has been in that department. Here's another good example right here really quick. So see what's happening here against Chiefs with Mahomes. Now keep in mind, the Chiefs aren't the greatest example. They didn't have a great year last year. But just watch AJ here all the way on the right. He's going to work his way down. And 77 was doing a good job holding up on him, but he ended up rolling out. So they kind of give up on that. But Epinesa does not give up on a play. It's like I told you, he's got heart and hustle that I really enjoy. He's kicking out, kicking, and he's able to land his hand first, which is typically an immediate advantage to the rusher. The question is, how does the tackle recover? He's trying to just push him off, and the way he's changing his approaches, he's kind of just stops, gets engaged, and he just starts kicking forward. He's using his hands to kind of basically say, like, stay away. Keep your distance, keep your distance. There goes Mahomes. And now he's got a free run. And Bosa's closing, but then there's your hit. So he doesn't give up on the play. He's like, I got to play through him, which I love that positive too. So there's more good things I do see with AJ than I think. There's just a couple things with the injury stuff where it looks like he's moving slower than usual. I think if you hit him with the right approaches low and you derail him off his original track, it's hard for him to get back into it because he doesn't really have the move set I like necessarily that kind of makes him a prime target, prime rusher. Got to worry about him all the time. If the Eagles can work on his move set a little bit, I think some good secondary counters, I think we'll have an opportunity here to see AJ take that next step this year with the Eagles. And if he does, you could expect about a 7 or 8 sack year. That is if the physical clears and there isn't any hang up involving his medicals. But I do expect a better year from AJ. You're going to a defensive team that is so well built on getting better, but also they have a proven track record of also turning guys into stars in one season. We saw them do it on the offensive side with Mekhi Becton a couple years ago when they won the Super Bowl. They made him a Super Bowl winning quality guard. And then once he left, it wasn't the same. But here in Philly, maybe that can happen with AJ. Maybe AJ can take that next step forward and get better as a member of the Eagles. I think he can become a more impactful, powerful rusher than we think. And he's a decent run support guy too. One thing you will not see also, which I think is an unspoken thing for him, is when you drop him into coverage, he does a pretty good job of keeping everything in front of him. And once that happens, he's quick to tackle, quick to wrap. They don't get past him, which is another big positive. We want to see more of that from him as well. The Eagles might want to use him in that way, make him more of a coverage guy more often, which would not be a bad thing, but it all depends. What's the approach? What's the intention? Is it going to be good or bad? How is he going to progress? I'm optimistic for AJ here in Philly, and I think Sirianni can find a good spot for him and turn him into something that the Bills couldn't quite get out of him this past year, but they can maybe get him back to those 23, 22 levels that were very good, where he was in the high single digits for sacks. We're talking about like 7 sack seasons. He was doing really well. And finally, for our last segment, we're going to get into our feel-good moment of the week to wrap up the show. On this one today, I'm going to bring you a story from the Jacksonville Jaguars. Now, you all know during the draft, I was very, very much a doomer when it came to how I felt about their draft process, especially with their first pick of the draft being Nate Borkacher, who I wasn't huge on. But it's always cool, like I said, to always look in the war room, see how the team felt and what led them to making the decision. We did get that clip recently thanks to Ari Mayrov, who posted it on X. We're going to take a look at that video right now, just kind of see what the reaction is like when you pick a guy like this.
Go with the guy I love. Big Nate. Shock the world, baby. Come on now. Hottest player remaining is A&M. 87. What do you prefer?
Always Bork. Kind of when you go into the pre-draft stuff, a lot of people tell you, like, the teams you talk to the least, a lot of times they are the ones that end up picking you. Obviously, I talked with them a little bit, but yeah, I had no idea going in.
Choose. Yeah. Choose changing the offense. Well, I did have a dream. So it's like, we're not going to go wrong.
No, we're not going wrong with it.
Take Bork in that, like.
Damn right. Let's go, old Bork.
Yeah, I'd rather take a guy that we all
Love.
love. Like,
Hey, Trip. You guys can start prepping for Borkacher. Don't send it just yet. Yep. I'm going to go ahead and call him.
So I actually got a phone call. Obviously, I didn't have the number. It said spam. So I kind of questioned it. I was hesitant. I showed it to my agent. He's like, gotta answer it.
Hey, Nate. It's James Gladstone with the Jaguars. You know what? Life is pretty good. I'm jacked to share the news with you. We're going to go ahead and select you here with the 56th overall pick. Game on, baby.
So I answered it, and it was them. But, you know, it was a really cool moment.
Maybe it's great. It's just
Jacksonville has submitted its pick. Chicago is on the clock.
I'm doing. I think I'm the only guy doing a little bit better than you, man. I'm tired. I'm fired up, man. It's excited to get you down here, get to work. It's gonna be a lot of fun. All right, brother. Can't wait.
A really cool story, honestly. It's not something where, you know, we all have our opinions about the way things unfold, especially when it comes to the way your teams pick and who they draft, but it's really cool to see how a draft room feels about a player, because this is a little different. We all didn't have a very great grade on Borkature, especially being a second round grade. That was not there for most people. But for the Jaguars themselves, they really had a guy that they liked, that they had a great process with, who they enjoyed on paper, and meeting him in person. And when that happens and the team is in unanimous agreement on it, they're in unity, that's typically a point where you say to yourself, we'll take the risk. We don't want to risk losing this guy because we love having him in the building. We think he's meant to be a Jaguar. If we had him, we'd all love him. So when it comes to that, even if it feels like a reach to other people, for your team, it's about what do you value the most? And they valued Nate much higher than others did. And so for that reason, that makes this a really cool clip. And that's my feel-good moment, is knowing that this guy was valued by this team so heavily. And that's a great thing to have. And with that, I want to thank you all for joining us today here on the Brian Mansell Show. Thank you for tuning in. If you haven't already, make sure you've liked, subscribed, followed the podcast, and share it out to all your friends so we can continue to grow this podcast over time and hopefully get some more cool little interviews involved here soon. Thank you all for tuning in. We'll be back on Monday with a brand new episode. But until then, stay safe, stay healthy, and we'll see you soon. Don't party too hard this weekend. I know the Knicks are one game away from winning the NBA Finals championship, and I know that we have a good amount of our audience that listens out of New York. So listen, just stay safe, be smart, just do not make any mistakes. Don't slip up. Don't be a Spurs fan. That's all I got to say. Thank you. Have a good one. We'll see you after this weekend. Take care.